I guess to start, I have wanted to be a writer since I was 9 years old. I literally told my family, I was like, I will be a writer. What did that mean? I had no idea. I am from like a pretty small suburban place. I didn't grow up knowing any, practicing artists or writers. So I didn't really have a concept of what even being a professional writer would look like. Um, and I guess in my head, I just was like, I'll just be wearing a blazer and sitting and somehow I'll have all these books like in the airport. And so really, a lot of my career has been a little bit of figuring it out and kind of creating the career that I didn't see out there in the world. A lot of times we can look at folks and think, okay, that's the life I want, but I kind of have always run into not really seeing that model. And it's been really hard at points to try to know where to go. And a lot of, you know, my life and career has been leaps of faith and leap really the faith in myself. Even when there's opposition or doubt from the outside. Um, so, okay, to go back a little bit, I'm a kid, I'm 9, I'm talking about I want to be a writer, I have blazers, so therefore we're good. I'm 15, I get a typewriter, it's done. My identity is set. When I was y'all's age, I was yeah, just writing all the time. I had so many journals. I still have them and use some of the excerpts in my latest book, which is amazing. Um, Always writing, telling little stories. I wasn't writing poetry really because the poetry that we were taught in school was very boring to me and like about snow, and I'd never seen snow. So, it took until I got actually to college before I read poems that I enjoyed and thought, this is something that I maybe could do. And there's a place for my voice here. In high school, I got really into journalism, high school journalism. I was editor of my school yearbook. And in college, I really thought I was going to study English, um, having always loved to read and just knowing, okay, I'll be an English major and a writer, and this is the thing. Sounds like that's what you do. Um, I ended up majoring in anthropology, which like sociocultural anthropology, which I was like looking at the course catalog and it said anthropology is the study of human beings. And I was like, yeah, that's what I need. I that sounds more helpful to me than English. So that's also been another part of my writing career. It's always been compelled by this interest and curiosity in human beings and how we interact with each other and why and what is possible in our interactions. So that is kind of always behind my writing. And I found that I ended up double majoring with anthropology and creative writing, which I found was really, really useful because I was able to bring in what I was learning in some classes into my poems and into my short stories and essays that I was working on in creative writing. And for me, that was just a lesson in learning to live as a writer. I think often we think of like, oh, I'm a writer and I'm writing, but a lot of it isn't writing. A lot of it is just being in the world and being absorbent, being curious and noticing things. So I think that for me, it was helpful to learn how to apply things from other areas and bring them in. It's not just reading other poems or stories. It's not just reading creative writing that will inform your work. So that has been something that has always guided me. Where do I find inspiration? It's not always in other literature. Sometimes I go to museums, sometimes I'm just sitting in a cafe and overhearing people's conversations. Writing starts everywhere, and I think that is something that I've always known. And it's been cool to be intentional about knowing that and trusting that. I think sometimes we struggle with writer's block. And of course, when I'm working like on a book project, I feel like I should just be super focused on that. But part of being a writer is um, turning your brain off a little bit and letting ideas kind of work in your mind for a little bit. And I like to say that my writing process is in stages. And the first stage is the collecting stage, which you don't know how long that's going to go. So I often try to comfort myself in times when I'm not physically writing that I still am. I'm still writing. It's still part of the writing process of collecting thoughts, ideas. It's like going to the movies, it's talking to friends, it's looking at art books. All of that becomes part of the process. In college, I ended up taking a poetry class. It was a seminar, it wasn't a workshop. So I felt, okay, I won't have to really write poems. The writing exercises were mostly, reading poems and then um, trying to write like that writer or trying out different forms. So it really was just kind of practice. And I took it as a challenge, especially with formal poetry, sonnets and kind of the older and more traditional, the more I wanted to play with it and make it my own. So I took it as a challenge to kind of turn the whole thing on its head. I did not take it very seriously, I will say that. I really was like, how can I make a sonnet about a hangover? Like how can I, just like reflect what's happening around me and in my world, but utilizing these formal and sort of foreign to me techniques and forms. So for me, there's always been a big element of playfulness in my writing and in the way that I connect to writers that have come before me. So I really was, writing these poems and reading them at parties. Like I wrote a poem about my freshman year roommate and I hated her duvet or whatever. I'm reading them at parties. And I went to office hours one day and my professor was like, did you know that these poems are good? And I did not know that. So, it really took someone else saying, this is good. And that's kind of worth digging into. And sometimes I talk about how it's such a shame that poetry almost missed me, because of the way it's taught. And even when I was taught poetry in elementary school, even the teachers seemed bored, like it just was, and it took so long. It's like you have to go through so much schooling to get to a place where you're reading contemporary poets. I mean, messy women. I mean, real grief and honesty and just kind of contemporary life, pop culture, and all of it. It took a really long time to get there. So it is kind of a shame to me that, here 3 poetry books later, that I almost totally missed the whole thing. So it is important for me to always be trying to bring in younger folks and show them that they can have a place in worlds that it doesn't seem like they historically have been able to. So yeah, my professor was like, have you heard of getting an MFA? I had not. I did not know about that. That is a Master of Fine Arts. And he really kind of helped me out, showed me the way. And I ended up applying to grad school right out of college. It was big time. It was 2010, so it was like there weren't a lot of jobs. It was like Occupy Wall Street. So went right to grad school. And that ended up being where I wrote my first book. It was my thesis for graduation and became my first book. And yeah, the publishing process is weird. Submitting your first book is really, really scary. You get rejected a lot. And there's a building of muscles, that comes with that of, you just learn how to take those hits. And I really struggled for a bit with that sort of rejection because I wasn't sure of myself as a writer. I was sure of my abilities, but I wasn't sure of my place in the writing world. And at first, the rejection felt like a hard no, like there's no room for you. And so I had to learn how to take it differently. I had to learn how to understand that just because my work doesn't look like what's already out there doesn't mean that it can't be out there. And that's scary, but everyone who's ever written or created something that is new has been rejected, because it looks different. And I since have been an editor for literary magazines as well as books. And so I know from the editorial side that there are a lot of choices that go into, what gets picked for publication. And it often has nothing to do with the quality of the writing. But that's not something when you're first like, I spent so much time on this and I'm putting it out there and they don't want it. But for me, there was a way that I came to understand that they just didn't really necessarily know what they were looking at. And a lot, I think the first years of my career as a poet were, I guess, like affirming to audiences and myself that there was room for the writing that I was doing. And you know, in grad school, I struggled a bit. A lot of the folks that were in my program were writing a lot of similar sorts of things, had similar tone or style. And I remember folks being like, "Are you afraid to be pigeonholed over here?" And you know, seems like that person's going to be really famous. That person's going to be in the New Yorker, and you're just writing jokey things. Um, there was a lot of expectations on me and a lot of discounting, actually. And it was interesting for me to kind of come to a conclusion. And this is like, I mean, I guess it would probably have been my second year when I was like, maybe they're right. Maybe poetry, capital P, is stuff that's in the New Yorker. And if so, then I guess I won't be a poet. I mean, I remember going to workshop one day and I really tried to write the poetry poem that sounded like something I had read elsewhere. Um, and I brought it to workshop and it was so bad, y'all. It was so bad. And everyone was like, what is this? But I had to just try it. And it's like, I tried, it did not work. What I'm good at is what I'm good at. And what's funny is I feel like as soon as I was like, if I'm not a poet and I gotta write something and it becomes something else, it is what it is. It felt like, and I know it's like probably not exact, but it felt like the minute I did that, I started getting acceptances. And there's something about coming to that conclusion yourself and just being like, well, okay, I'm still going to do what I'm doing, and if that means I have to get a different job, that's fine. I'm still going to write what I'm writing. And it was a little bit, yeah, hope and a little bit of just kind of trusting not only myself, but my audiences. And again, that is a sort of trusting myself. If I'm entertained by this, if I feel compelled to talk about these things, there must be someone else that will connect on this level. I find that the best writing comes when I kind of get out of my own way. The more I try to like have reins on it, the more it feels inauthentic.
So people are always saying start at the beginning, which must be some sort of sick joke. We love linear narratives, the smooth waters of sequential order, but it's too clean. You get what you pay for, Morgan Parker. Okay, so here's where we will begin. Um, with thinking about when did you begin? This could be the beginning of your life, the start of a new version of you, a piece of history that shapes who you are, or anything else that feels like the beginning of you. Write about the beginning. How has that beginning shaped you? How have you grown since that beginning? So let's write for 5 minutes, thinking about what Morgan has shared and thinking about our own beginnings. So for 5 minutes, we'll write and then we'll reconvene. Happy writing. So our next writing exercise is disorienting to be defined by strangers. Before you can actually become a psychologically whole human being, before you can find yourself, you have to first find the fake self and question how it got put there. Then you can burn that effort up and get and get on with self-actualization. Brilliant words from You Get What You Pay For by Morgan Parker. All right. How is your fake self different from your true self? What causes you to perform your fake self? Write about an experience you've had in which you needed to perform a false version of yourself, or a time when you were able to be your true self. So we'll take another 5 minutes and write, and then we'll share aloud. We really appreciate you, your insights, your vulnerability, your humor, your writing prompts, your brilliance. I can go on and on. I wish we had 3 hours to to chat and write together. This has been a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, Morgan.
Thank
So,
y'all.
folks, yes, if you want to stay in touch, we've got the Instagrams, we have the X, we have the email for Morgan here on the screen. You can find her on Instagram at Morgan Apple, at X at Morgan Apple as well. And her email is Morgan Apple, that's a zero, at gmail.com. Stay in touch if you have any questions that went unanswered. And lastly, thank you all so much. It's lovely to start the weekend off with you. Thank you, Morgan, for just being so incredible and spending your time with us and your energy and wisdom and light. So follow us at Girls Right Now on all social media platforms, and we can't wait to see you at the next one. Thank you again.